Mr. Gray, if the United States were to go forward with attempting to acquire Greenland, it would likely require the active agreement of Denmark and also the vote of the people of Greenland that this was a mutually beneficial step. Let's focus initially on the first part. From the perspective of Denmark, what are the benefits to Denmark of considering this negotiation?
Well, Senator, I would say Denmark has failed, unfortunately, to provide the type of security that the alliance, that NATO, that we all need in the Greenland region, in the Arctic, for a long time. So having a U.S. commitment to take on some of that security burden would be beneficial to Denmark based on their behavior to date. I know they've recently increased some defense spending relative to Greenland. That's great, but we have a pattern of decades of neglect. So I would think that would be to their benefit. Look, I think the larger question here, Senator, is Denmark is not going to have as a constituent part Greenland over the long term. And so the Greenlanders have made that clear. So the question is, what is the security architecture that's going to be in place at that ultimate point of independence? And it's not in Denmark's interest, just as it's not in our interest, to have a vacuum that is filled by China and Russia. And that's why having some sort of discussion about what comes next is so critical.
So if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, there are three principal benefits to Denmark of considering selling Greenland's territory to the United States. The first is that their existing defense obligations put significant costs on Denmark, costs that are a real burden to the government of Denmark and the people of Denmark. The second is if the United States were to shoulder the cost of providing that defense of Denmark would also significantly increase the defense of Greenland, rather, would also significantly increase the defense and security of Denmark, and limiting the role of Russia and China in the Arctic also inures to the defense benefits of Denmark. But number three, and this is an important point you made, we are seeing a growing independence movement in Greenland. If Denmark were to negotiate today with the Trump administration to sell the territory of Greenland to the United States, it would presumably be able to negotiate some substantial sum of money. That's how we purchased Louisiana Purchase, that's how we purchased the Virgin Islands, that's how we purchased Alaska. If Denmark does nothing and Greenland declares independence, then rather than getting some substantial sum of money, Denmark gets nothing. Is that a fair summary?
I think over the ultimate time frame we're talking about, Senator, that's true, because I believe we should take the Greenlanders at their word that they will be an independent country at some point. And ultimately, sir, it is not in Denmark's interest to leave a security vacuum in the high north. In addition to your point about the costs, they will suffer as much as anyone from having what I think is the 100% predictable outcome of China and Russia stepping into that vacuum if we don't have some sort of clear security architecture in place.
So I think that's very powerful. Let's turn to the benefit to the Greenlanders. And Mr. Marchese, I think if this were to proceed, it would in all likelihood require a referendum of the people of Greenland making a choice. Do you want to become an American? Do you want to join the United States as a territory or in some other legal structure? And there's been some chatter online about an early public poll that was done that suggested that currently Greenlanders did not want to do that. That does not strike me as terribly probative, given that this is the very beginning of a discussion, and any referendum would be made with the Greenlanders assessing, what do we get for it? What's our benefit? How are our lives better off? So in your judgment, how would the lives of Greenlanders be better off were they to become part of America?
Senator, I mentioned in my testimony that McGill University had done a survey of the population, and they were for mining. So I believe part of it is the recognition that were the United States to come in, more than likely, they would provide some form of financial assistance to allow private companies to come in and mine. And the vast majority, I think they said about 85% of the Inuits wanted mining, with the exception of uranium. That's a separate topic. The point is, I believe once the Greenlanders recognize that the United States would come in and provide a lot of assistance, that mining jobs would be there, and that's very important for the population. There just isn't that much mining right now, and I think that if there were the prospect of financial assistance to jumpstart the mining industry, I think you would see more Greenlanders interested in becoming part of the United States.
Well, we see significant discussion. I sat down this past week with the ambassador from Denmark and with the ambassador representative from Greenland, and one of the things we discussed is the very significant benefits that come with American citizenship. And I think, for example, of Puerto Rico, where the people of Puerto Rico enjoy a considerable upside from their current status as an American territory. And were Greenland to agree to this acquisition, the Greenlanders would get the invaluable asset of American citizenship, but also would benefit from billions of dollars of additional investment in Greenland to develop those rare earth minerals, the vast resources they have that are not currently being developed. Tell us, how would the investment increase, and how would that benefit Greenland and America if Greenland's status were to change such that it were part of the United States?
Senator, the first step, as I mentioned in my testimony, would be to actually provide, I believe the USGS would be the best forum or the best agency to do this, but with the USGS's assistance, undertake a massive mineral characterization in the country. Well, first of all, that in and of itself, it's not a short-term process. That's probably a few years to do that. That in and of itself would provide jobs for people. Remember, there are only 56,000 people there, so you don't need that many to be happy to have the entire country be happy. So the USGS comes in, provides some assistance to map, in essence, map the area to figure out which deposits are real, which deposits are not real. Once you do that, then you start getting into convincing companies to put money in, and that provides even more jobs. So I think even before you start putting a shovel in the ground to create a mine, you have, in my opinion, the potential for thousands of new jobs in a mining industry. I mean, at the end of the day, Greenland, in my opinion, can become with obviously responsible environmental oversight, can become a major international producer of all types of minerals, not to mention, as Senator Cantwell said, a potentially large hydro industry. And that in of itself requires, forget about rare earth minerals, but as an example, the hydro industry would require a tremendous amount of jobs. But remember, the expertise has to be developed also.
So there are potentially massive economic benefits.
I believe massive